Last week we talked in depth about stages 1, 2, and 3 as we find it in Max Camp's book, Teaching Piano, Elementary Stages 1, 2, and 3. I mentioned to you that the books that I developed that use those concepts are Folk Tunes 1, 2, and 3, and they are now available as a digital download on Top Music Marketplace for almost the price of buying a book, and you're given permission to make copies for your students and perhaps put them in a notebook like this to loan, or get a cone binding or whatever. If you missed last week, you might want to go back and listen to last week's talk. All right, so today we're going to talk about stages 4, 5, and 6. Stage 4 focuses on phrasing and articulation. The concept of balance needs to come before phrasing because you have to have something that you can hear to balance first. And then in articulation, parallel articulation needs to come before contrasting. Parallel articulation is like this. Contrasting is like this. So here's a book that I put together of original pieces in their original form. I just cherry-picked the pieces that fit my concepts and put them in this book here. It starts out with very simple counterpoint. You have to be able to read counterpoint with ease. And then after a number of those pieces and an introduction to articulation, here is the first piece with parallel articulation. And after a number of those pieces, then pieces with contrasting articulation are introduced. First, very little contrasting, and then gradually more and more contrasting articulation. When you're finished with this book, you're pretty much ready articulation-wise to jump into the big pond where all the classical collections are already printed and available, and there's some wonderful things out there. So that's stage 4. Stage 5 is a place to make sure that rhythms are secure. You want to address all the 16th note patterns, all the huckleberry pies, blackberry pies, butterscotch pies, etc., and the groupings that go with the threes, the triple meter as well. So I loan an out-of-print book to my students, and unfortunately my one copy is out right now. I can't show it to you. Etudes in Rhythm by Roger Grove. When I have something that's out of print and I want to have my student to use it, I make a copy. And it's legal because I already own the book. I'm not loaning it to 3 people at the same time if I own one copy. So my one copy is out to one student right now. But that's Etudes in Rhythm. Now, the other thing to cover in stage 5 is MultiKey at a more advanced level. And I put together this book, it's Folk Tunes. It has folk tunes in all the keys, but it has more than that. It has, for example, here there are always 2 pieces in each key, and then there are pieces to harmonize with the lead sheet, with and then without the chords suggested, and then transpose. And then I have a recent addition here, and that is improvisation patterns. I have 2 pages of improvisation patterns for you to go back through, take the student back through perhaps the next year. Makes this a worthwhile investment. Go back through and choose some of these, one or two of these patterns, and improvise a little bit using those patterns for the left hand. So all of my students go through this book at some point, usually around stage 5. Now, stage 6 is an introduction to style. And I'm careful to have students working in all 4 styles, if possible, at the same time. And at this point, they're doing a Bach minuet and a little sonatina and a very simple, maybe Chopin prelude in E minor or something like B minor or something like that. The difference between the classical pieces in their original form that I introduce here and the ones I introduce using a method, a collection, is that here I'm teaching musical concepts. I'm focused on balance and phrasing, on parallel and contrasting articulation. In stage 6, I'm focused on introducing the style. So I'm talking to them about style periods, the three, famous composers, time periods, but also what's allowed in, maybe we'll talk about that another time. The things that are common. How much pedal are you allowed in each style? How much retard are you allowed? What's the range, a typical range? What's the typical texture? Those kind of things. I think I learn well by comparing and contrasting. And I think my students do too. So I compare and contrast, and I take lesson time to do that and write it down in their assignment book and ask them to copy that out as a principle to add to their list of principles, ever-growing list of principles that I teach, which is furthering my overarching goal of developing an independent musician.